That's the biggest change, is that your world starts to evolve around doing pickups and drop-offs and not going out for food after work or drinks. It's, I've got to get home for pickup. But I found that okay because I got to enjoy those things prior. Now I get this new opportunity to be there for pickup. As I said, those magical moments in the car cocoon. I wouldn't change that for anything.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition. Welcome back to Life in Transition podcast. I'm very excited today to have Mark Hunter with us. And Mark is an Olympic athlete, father, and a leadership performance coach. So I'm really happy to have you here, Mark, and look forward to hearing your story.
No, looking forward to, having some great conversation, maybe some good stories come out, and just seeing what we can learn from each other.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a perfect podcast for me and for our listeners as well. So jumping right in, Mark, what would you consider to be the most meaningful transition that you've been through in your life?
Now I'm kind of 46 years old, so there's been a number of them as I've kind of
for sure.
Up, I guess. So you think of different phases of life. Obviously, being an athlete, that transition out was one into the real world, I call it. But I think that the most challenging, most rewarding was probably that transition into being a dad.
Mm-hmm.
As an athlete and a professional person, you've got these accolades for doing different things, but that word daddy, I don't know, there was something special about that for me, and that transition into being a dad and that being my new name, I guess. So that was something that I feel really fortunate to have had, and that was definitely, I think, the biggest transition I've been through.
Awesome. So how old, if I remember right, you have a daughter?
Yeah, she'll be 7 in January. So she's our first and our eldest. And she's 1st of January. So she was a New Year's Day baby. So that was quite exciting. And then my son came 3 years later, called Calvin. And he's going to be 4 in December. So their birthdays are really close together. And having a boy and girl, I feel quite blessed in that way. I always would have loved one of each, and I feel I hit the jackpot, or we hit the jackpot with that, because I come from a family of 2 boys, so it was all very male dominated with the conversation, the way we operated. But when I had a girl as number 1, I saw it as this is going to be incredible.
That's awesome. So it is interesting when I was thinking about that. You said you changed your name to dad, and it's something that, like, as society, that's the only time we really officially get a new name. We might get new titles as we go along, right? We might add a PhD or a lawyer or a jurist or judge, president. But it's the only completely new name that we get, and it really is. It's is very with relation to family, to mom or to dad or granddad or Oma or Poppy if you go in other cultures. So it's really interesting. So when did you know that this would be the biggest transition? Was it like when your daughter was born, or did it hit you over time? How has this been the biggest transition, and when did it first hit you?
It was so I'll take you back to the moment it happened, I guess. We were out for New Year's Eve, friends, and we knew she was going to come in the next week. And then we went to bed that night after kind of New Year celebrations. And then it all happened in the early hours of the morning. So it kind of, we thought we were going to have New Year's Day to kind of go to the cinema and do different things. Our last kind of few days of just being me and my wife.
Right.
Before we become a family.
Before children.
Yeah. It was like we were going to go to the cinema. I never think we were going to go to the cinema. Like, we've got every man cinema in London. We were going to go to one of those. And just really enjoy our last day, I guess, of just quiet time, I guess. And then it all happened very quickly. And I remember when they said it's a girl, and me and my wife kind of looked at each other and we talked about names, and we talked about Kai as a boy. That was kind of what we had in our mind, but we were like, Kaya as a girl would be beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I remember when she came out and we got to see it together, it was like Kai. It wasn't like what we're going to call her. We knew exactly the name, her name basically. And then I don't know, because obviously she can't speak for a period of time, but I remember the nurse going, "You're a daddy now," and I'm like, "Oh, what do I do?" like, what do I do now? And they're like, "You'll be fine. You just work it out," sort of thing. And then they release you from the hospital, and I was like, "I've got to drive this cute little thing home now that I've got to look after. Like, I've got to provide and make sure she's okay." I remember that first night we got home, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat there staring, like, is she breathing? Is she okay? And that was my first kind of reality check of that. When you become, in my eyes, a parent, you become even more less important, if that makes sense, because you're just trying to do the best job. And I found that trying to read things and listen to things, I couldn't really relate to them. I'm not going to lie, I really struggled to listen to or read books and really be in my position. And I do remember what the nurse said, you'll work it out. Those were things, you'll work it out. We do this every day with parents, and they work it out as they go along. But yeah, it was that when she said, oh, you're a daddy now. And that was, oh, okay. What does that actually mean?
What does that mean? So when you're sitting there the first night, sitting there watching her the whole night, what were you feeling? Like, what's going through, like, what's your thoughts? What's your feeling as you're sitting there watching this, life?
Yeah. So it was, it's like, what is she going to be? What is she going to do when she's older? Where are we going to live? All these other things start to play out. Like I think I started to play out her life, I guess, in my eyes, which is not always a good thing, because I want to experience and develop in our own way. But it was more about I was really fortunate. My parents were amazing. So I've had a really blessing kind of upbringing with my parents, and we're really close. And you always try and do it even better. That's why I look at it. How can I advance that to a different level? What things did they make me feel comfortable with that I can use, and how do I add new things to make it even better? So I think it was just kind of that every scenario in my head playing out while I was watching her chest and her breathing, thinking, is she okay? Do I need to do anything? But obviously, when they're just born, it's like they just need to sleep and be fed. It's pretty much, it's pretty simple. Your eyes, it's so complicated because I've never done all these things before. So it was, I guess, what is this young person going to be? That's what I kept thinking. What wonderful things is she going to do?
It's interesting too. You said a couple things. One was that you somehow become less important when you had this life in front of you. And it's not all of a sudden, especially with your background where you were so focused on achievement and performance in sport, right?
Yeah.
And especially your sport is pretty, I'm not completely solo. We had a team, but it's you're a pretty small focus. And now you have this other life that you said makes you feel, that it's not all about you at this point. What shifted? Because I think that's something that's obviously normal for parents, but what shifted in you at that point, and how did it affect the rest of your world?
Yeah, so I remember, because as an athlete, as you mentioned, that you're very selfish. You can't get away from that. It's all about performance and looking after yourself and your recovery and food and training and not getting sick. And if you get sick, you normally, who got me sick? How did I get sick? That sort of thing. Or all those go to the, when you've got a child, you can't avoid getting sick because they pick up bugs. But I just felt, because I never wanted to be a parent as an athlete, I never wanted to mix the both. I just didn't feel I could be the person I wanted to be or would like to be as a parent. But then I just kept thinking, how can I do the best job to give her the best opportunities, the best things in life? And I don't know, people talk about a special bond between like kind of girls and their dads and sons and their mums. And all I kept thinking, how do I create that? How do I kind of get that right? Because I'd love, as she grows older, to be able to confide in me in anything.
Right.
To be there as a sounding board, or to offer my small bit of advice that she definitely doesn't want to listen to right now because she knows everything. But it's just, how do I kind of create an atmosphere where we can have any conversation? And I don't want her to feel fearful of asking anything or sharing anything. So I think that was something for my parents. They did a really good thing in that. Me and my brother could talk about anything. But how do I use that skill that they've shown me? How do I bring that into my own kind of toolkit as a parent? I think I'm still working on that one, actually. Still working.
How's it going so far? I mean, now she's 7 and, you're probably not quite the complete hero you were for the first 3 or 5 years, right? And that'll continue to degrade until she's 16 or 17, and then maybe it'll start to come back up,
Yeah, I think it's been a really, because of the last 7 years of what's happened in the world with, she was born just before COVID, and then we had COVID, and then we had a second child during COVID, and then Calvin came along, and then obviously Jenny, my wife, spends all her time making sure that he's okay, Then Daddy becomes a prominent figure in Kaya's life, which, that those times of picking her up from nursery to home when we lived in like London, walking through the park and, can we go on the swings, Daddy? We need to get home, but actually, no, we got time. We can, because everybody kept saying this time would disappear really quickly.
Right.
Really quickly. Right. And then watching her confide, always snuggle up to Daddy at night if she called and that sort of stuff. But now she's got her own mind, and she's challenging me in other ways, which is, keeps me evolving and learning. But I don't have all the answers. That's most important. I've learned to be comfortable not knowing everything.
Right. Yeah, and it's of course we know we don't know everything, but our kids don't know we don't know everything.
Yeah.
And how do you model that in a healthy way and still have the answers you have and give them the security, but without false appearance or false identity on your own side.
So what I loved in the car, actually, when I pick them up from school and I pick them both up, and then that in the mornings, because sometimes it's going to be a bit hectic trying to get them both out the door and get in the car. And then there's something special about that conversation in the morning on the way to school. We kind of top and tail kind of pickups, but if you pick them both up together and you get them having conversation, they're like magical moments in the car. There's something special about what they're willing to share about their day. I always say, what's the most exciting thing or the best thing you did today? And then they share whatever that is if they're in a good mood. Sometimes I say, Daddy, I don't want to talk about it now. I'll talk about it later. And then that'll be kind of bedtime if we've got time where we can talk about the day. What happened today? What was good? What did we learn? Those sort of things. But that 15, 20 minutes in the morning of just being in that, I say the car cocoon, if you want to call it that, where it's just us. And then they'll ask a question sometimes, and I'll say, Daddy doesn't know the answer, but I'll try and work it out, or we'll work it out together. So I'm quite open to them understanding that I don't have all the answers, but I will do my best to find the appropriate answer that helps them, basically.
This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Midlife Transition Mastery. If you have reached midlife and you are successful, you have checked all the boxes, you've done everything you thought you should do, and especially pleasing everybody else, doing what you think everyone else needs you to do, but you still feel like something's missing, like you're coming up empty, feeling alone, feeling misguided or lost. Midlife Transition Mastery Explorer community is for you. Here we will build authentic community. We will learn about the 8 steps to mastering midlife transition, and we will learn and execute living life with no regrets in our second half. Please check out the community on lifeintransition.online/MLTM, Midlife Transition Mastery. And I look forward to seeing you around the fire in this community. I had this advice once when my kids were young. They said that, which really made sense to me, is that kids, like, we worry about what we tell our kids, or is it okay to let them know we don't know anything? And they said, you can't tell your kids, like, you don't have to worry about sharing something that's above their head because they won't get it. If it's not appropriate time for them to get it, they won't get it. But if they can get it, then it's time for them to get it and understand that. And to know that, like the nurse told you, life is something we figure out as we go. We don't necessarily have all the answers ahead of time. Or as you're sitting there in the dark thinking about what your daughter's going to be, the reality is you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? But that you want to be there for it. And I love that you recognize to create the time, create the spaces where you guys can relate. Because I think that's one of the most powerful thing parents can do, is create space where I call it dropping into my child's world, right? Where I drop into their world instead of having an agenda. It's not about doing homework. It's not even about getting ready for out the door to school. But where are there places where you can just create space, like the car cocoon, or like right before you go to bed, or walking in the park, or taking that chance to swing.
Yeah.
Because those will be fleeting. You never know when it's the last time you'll get to do that. Right. My daughter just left for university in UK in September. And my wife's flying back from there right now, celebrating her 19th birthday. And I can remember, she's 18, right, in last summer, and thinking, I'm tired. Should I go to bed now? I'm going to go up and, give my daughter a hug and talk her in. And she's not going to bed yet, right? 18 years old.
Yeah.
And then I would always say, wait a minute, this could be the last time I get to do that, right? Who knows where the summer gets to and where she's at, And then I would remind myself, hey, if this was the last time, would I take the time to do it? Would I make that more important than something else on my list? And of course, when I think of it that way, the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that you're already doing that. I wanted to come back on, Mark, like when you realized, and this sounds tough, so it's not really that, but it is a little bit like when life wasn't all about you. Now you have something really bigger than yourself that you're responsible for, no matter what. When you realized that, looking back at it now, how did that shift like the rest of your life? Like, how did that change other relationships? How did that change maybe your professional life? Like, when you had that realization that you now have a responsibility that's bigger than you, how did that affect the rest of your life?
Just take a step, because I think about something that really helped me, and it was an observation of my wife when Kai came into the world, the change of her without her realizing how she went from being my wife to a mother with like blink of an eye. And the change was something quite special. When I remember thinking in the moment, wow, that's amazing. Like, she's gone from being someone I've spent my life with and having a great time, and now she's a mother, and that shift into that nurture part of how they just instinctively do it. So that was something that I guess was really powerful to see and observe. And then I guess learning from my wife in that respect, because she's really thoughtful. She challenges me quite a lot on the way I think and the way I operate, which I love. I love that. But then I think for me, it was the excitement of wanting to be something different or do something different rather than just about me. So how do I embrace the challenge that's about to happen? And I just give it, how do I make the most of this opportunity? That's all I kept thinking, was that some people aren't fortunate enough to be in this position with what we have, and the child and that sort of thing. And you talk about how do I kind of make the most of this and embrace it. And I think what you were asking there about my kind of time and diary shift of, like, it would always be yes to most things. I can do that. I've got time. Right. Or then actually, is that possible now? Can I do that? Because the drop off, pick up, trips, school fate. I don't know. There's so much going on in the diary with children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I have to, like, my old way of thinking would jump in and say, I've got to take a pause now. I've got to think about, can I actually do that? Or am I going to kind of affect the pattern of how we operate at home? And that's something I'm still trying to adjust with. I'm really, trying to work out, because my work, sometimes I could be away for a few nights. Yep. And that's quite challenging. And I think in September, my daughter was like, Daddy, you're away too much. She comes to that to me, and that broke my heart. My heart that she said something like that. And that naturally made her shift more to warming towards my wife at night, because Daddy wasn't home for a few nights every week. And that was a kind of reality check that got to be careful, because I don't want to be distant. I want to be kind of integrated and part of all the conversations. So that's a big lesson for me. But I suppose it was a lesson of being at home all the time because of COVID. And then as we're going into the ways of operating now, where we can travel, we can do all these things, how do I get that balance right? So that's something that I'm constantly aware of when I'm saying yes to things and attending things and doing different kind of events.
So it's really affected how you, like, you're not just considering yourself when you're deciding what you're doing professionally, socially, in the community, et cetera. And the first priority is how to provide for and be the right dad and example. And it's not for your daughter and your son, for your family. And that doesn't mean that it's always, the answer is always stay home either, right? You also have to provide, and you have to be an example of going after your dreams for them as well. And it's that balance, and there's real conversations. And
so one thing that was really pleasant this summer, because the Olympics were on TV, her school asked me to come and speak at it. And the sense of pride that she had when I came in with kind of Olympic medals and got to speak to her friends and her teachers, it was amazing to watch her just, I don't know, she kind of glowed. It was amazing to watch how the sense of pride she felt, even though she wasn't alive when I did those things, because she understands the Olympics and Team GB and all these things. I got quite emotional when I was in this. It was really strange. There was a lot of emotion going for me during that period anyway with the games. But then to watch her excitement, but then my son start to feed off her excitement, and then talk about the Olympics was something really special because I want them to see exercise and movement as a really important part. So I try to get them
Absolutely.
to see me doing as many things as possible. So you don't have to be an Olympian, but to go out for a walk or go for a run or all those things I think are really important as good habits to get in for them. So just to watch her excitement of what Daddy used to do was something that was really special, really special.
Yeah, and she could see you maybe a little bit like from a different perspective than just as dad, right? Oh
Yeah,
wow, it's
yeah,
not, just like you learn to share with her that you don't have all the answers, which changes her perspective. But then also like, hey, this guy is he's also himself. He's also Mark Hunter, not just
yeah.
daddy, right? And there's another life there as well.
And it's the great questions that friends have. When I pick them up from school and I take them to swimming or gymnastics, they've always got questions now about the Olympics. But they want to, because they all got into it over the summer because of their age.
Right.
And they've got some amazing stuff. I just love their enthusiasm for what they watched and the gymnastics, because they would do gymnastics. Simone Biles was a huge thing we talked about.
Yeah.
I was talking a lot more about the power that she's shown with other things she's done. And then they start to learn more about her in that context rather than just an athlete. So
Yeah.
That's been really powerful as well, really powerful.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah, and the resilience aspect of, athlete and how much I'm amazed these days about how much our mindset affects what we can do as athletes. And it's clear, it's obvious on the world stage when you're talking about gold medals in the Olympics or, professional sports. But even in our day-to-day life, right? Like I'm 53 now and I do a lot of activities and I injure myself a fair amount. And what I've noticed is a lot of my friends my age, when they get injured now, they stop because they think, well, I've injured myself and I'm getting old, so I need to stop. But like when you were an athlete, I'm sure you had lots of strains and pulls and injuries, but you never would have considered stopping when you're 23. It's just get healed and keep going, right? And so the mindset, I mean, like take Simone Biles for an example. I mean, Simone Biles, there's no one's done what she's done, but no one in gymnastics didn't would have been anywhere close to her age.
No.
Right. And that started with her own mindset, right? Like, I'm not just going to say I can't do it because nobody's ever done it before. Let me see what I can actually do and have that sort of curiosity instead of criticalness or instead of shut down because it's time. I had very small version of that. Even like this year I did rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon. So it's a 50 mile, 12,000 feet, so 4,000 vertical feet or vertical meters of run in one day. And I'm not any kind of, anywhere close to being competitive or fast or anything else, but I had a pretty bad mountain bike wreck not even a month and a half out, and messed up the rotator cuff in this shoulder pretty badly. And my first thought was, okay, my legs are okay. I'm okay. But then I thought, ooh, what about my shoulder? And will I be able to do it? But instead of saying, wow, I couldn't even sleep because my shoulder hurt so much. But this movement of running, it didn't hurt. So I didn't let that stop me. And I kept my training. The next day I was running 20 miles.
Wow.
Right? And it's slow at my age, right? But it's still, putting in the reps. And then I would train with one hiking pole when I was running on hiking trails because I didn't want to use this arm too much. But when I got to there, I took both of them with me and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try. I'm not going to say I can't do it. And it'll help my stability a lot. It'll help me keep going. And I did, 40,000 reps, 80,000 steps, so 40,000 with this hand, with a hiking pole, with no damage to my shoulder, even though I still can't lift it to the side. So it's just to not assume we can't do things. And that's what it's been amazing with sports to see what people, especially from an age perspective, or I met a woman on the trail. She's a Paralympic athlete. She was in military service in the U.S. and she had a traumatic brain injury, lost her optic nerve. She's completely blind. And she was doing this trail, not rim to rim to rim, but rim to rim, still 25 miles, still incredibly intense, unguided. She's done it several times guided to learn it.
Whoa.
But unguided. And when I would talk to her, I didn't even know she was blind. Like we just had a normal conversation passing on the trail. She was asking where the bathroom was. And then I learned from other people that she was blind, and I looked up her story. And but to not say I can't do that. And she told me afterwards, she said, we were texting. She said, that was the most difficult thing I've ever done. And she's competed in 4 Olympic sports and blah, 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 Paralympics. But yeah, so it's just like, it starts with not holding ourselves back. And I love that, like if we can bring that into our kids now, and instead of going the other way where everything has to be so comfortable or else we can't do it, or so perfect or curated or whatever, right?
Which is not the real world. That's the thing.
It's not the real world. And how do we do what we can instead of assuming that we can't? There's
like different activities. When I think about with children, there's different activities they do, and sometimes they don't want to do it. They say they don't want to do it. Well, you're part of the team now. If you don't go, you'll let others down. How do you feel about that, or somebody else? So I always try and get them to think about in a different context rather than just about themselves. How's it affecting other people potentially? But I always think you just come back to what you're saying about injuries. Whenever kind of injury happened, it was always a chance to reflect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's happened? Why am I here? How do I make this not happen again? How do I, look after myself going forward? And that was a kind of fuel as like a power to pause thing.
Mm-hmm.
Reflect where I am. Okay, I did something wrong that's maybe made this happen, but how do I kind of stop it happening or eliminate it happening next time? And then how do I kind of get better as I kind of move on from this? So that was something that I always used to think about as an athlete, especially when I was in rehab. How do I make sure that I try not for this to happen again? Because there's nothing worse than being with the physio 24/7 indoors where everybody else is outside playing.
Right.
It's like being in the classroom in detention while everybody else is outside having fun.
At a recess, right? Yeah, no, and I think that's really good. And to know, and this maybe comes back to your kids about when they don't want to do something, to know when something is, I always say when something hurts or you don't want to do something versus when it's hurting you.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I know, I'm sure you experience that a lot in your athletic pursuits as well. But like when I'm out running and something's hurting, okay, is that hurting something that's going to wear itself through and I'll be gone and it'll be fine? Or is it actually doing damage?
Yeah.
And to know the difference. And the same thing, like when our kids don't want to do something, right? Or when I don't want to do something. I mean, I wrote this book to my kids called Purposeful Living, Wisdom for Coming of Age in Complex Times. And in one of the things I talk about in there is that to get what you want to have, to accomplish what you want to accomplish, you often have to do things you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's like part and parcel. That's part of the equation, right? If I want to run rim to rim to rim, guess what? I'm out at 5 or 4 in the morning in the summers in Tennessee running for 3 or 4 hours. And there's some mornings where I'd rather stay in bed. But if I want to do that, and I know I want to do that, then I know that's the price I have to pay. So how do we help our kids to accept that, hard things are not bad things?
Yeah.
Right. And how do we let them to embrace, even though I don't want to, there's a bigger part of me that actually wants the outcome, that wants the person I'm going to become through that challenge.
Because I've done that a few times where they don't want to do activities, and then they finish and they're like, "How was that?" They're like, "Oh, it was amazing. It was this, it was that." So I was like, "Do you want to record yourself saying these things?" And then obviously I say on the recording before you start, or the first part, say how you were feeling before you started.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
My daughter does that sometimes, and I play when she doesn't want to do it. I was like, "You said this last couple of weeks ago. This is the video that you're telling yourself that it will be okay.
Right.
You'll enjoy the end of it because of the excitement and fun." And sometimes, they've got so many things going on and they're trying to express their emotions and they don't actually know what's taking place. But just them reflecting on their own, experience and sharing it with themselves is sometimes been quite a powerful little tool that I've kind of used a few times.
I like that. And I like that you're also teaching them already to reflect, right? Self-reflection is such a powerful tool and it's not, there's many more people that don't use it than do. And there's so much to learn from that. But I think that we all have choice, but the choices, the best choices are ones that we make when we think about our short-term and our long-term benefit, mm-hmm. our short-term and our long-term health, our short-term and our long-term joy. And often the short-term pleasure or avoidance of pain that we do actually brings long-term depression. Really great that you're teaching your kids already at 4 and 7 at least to reflect like that, Mark. That's really great.
You just made me think about it because yesterday she has soccer practice on a Sunday morning, and they were given their kit yesterday or their gear.
Yep.
And there was 12 under 7 like young girls. It's their first time they've been given their football kits, and to watch their excitement of that jersey being given to them was something magical. It was incredible, and it just got me thinking back to a child when I first got mine. And then she wore it all day. She wore it all day long. The sense of pride she had,
All right.
it was incredible, absolutely incredible. Yeah, I just want to share that for some reason.
Yeah, no, but I think it makes sense, right? But you don't get to that unless you put in some energy
exactly. Yeah,
that you maybe don't want to do in order to get the result that you want to have or become the kind of person that you really ultimately want to be. And to understand that our feelings don't have to dictate our actions. And we should feel them. We should be aware of them 100%. Absolutely. But that doesn't necessarily have to dictate our actions.
You were talking about you don't want to get up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and want to go running. Yeah, definitely. That's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah. But if I'm tuned into what I want to accomplish, what I want to get to, then here's the thing. It's also interesting. Like, not even when I'm out there on the trail, but as soon as I make the decision, even at 4 o'clock, as soon as I make the decision, okay, I'm going. I already feel better.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I get out of that conversation in my head about either or and just like go, I already feel better and I'm going for it. So it's really great to see how intentional you are with being a father. I think, a lot of people, when they hear from the nurse or from their parents or from the midwife or the doctor, oh, don't worry about it, you'll figure it out. They don't take the time to still be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Right. They just sort of, okay, do the bare minimum because that's figuring it out. But to be really intentional about it and have these reflection times. And obviously you had really good, good parents giving you a good example as well growing up. But I think to be intentional about it and to realize that you really have this bigger purpose is really powerful. And I love seeing that.
And just that as well, I don't always get it right.
Of course. And nobody does.
And I'm always asked, like chatting with my wife, saying, I want to be better. I don't think I'm as good as I can be. And because of all the other stresses we have going on in life with work and everything else. And we've just done a refurbishment of a house and various other things. And the space to think is sometimes very limited. But yeah, I'm always trying to be better. Always, yeah. I never feel I'm where I need to be. And maybe that's something that keeps me on my toes, I guess, to try and get better and learn from others and, share what mistakes I've made and what good things have happened so far, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I think the important thing about that is in some ways you can't get it wrong. The only thing you can really get wrong is when you make a big mistake that you don't own it, right? No matter how big the mistake is, if you own it, and you go back and you model that to your kids, because guess what? They're going to make big mistakes too.
Yeah.
Right. But if you model that, hey, I'm sorry I blew up at you, and how are you feeling now? And what can I do to make it up? Right. And spending time, I've sat outside my kids' doors on the bedroom when they're slammed and closed and locked and just sat there because they're so angry at me because I screwed up so bad. But after a half hour, they open the door. Dad, you still there? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you made me think about something like, when I lose my temper, and I raise my voice, which I don't like doing, but you've asked them to do something to help them 20 times.
Yeah, 10 times, 20 times, exactly.
And then you're like, did you hear me? No, I didn't hear you, Daddy. Well, I said it 20 times. You must have heard me once. No, I didn't. And then he raised my voice, and then that kind of moment, them looking up at me, and I'm like, oh no, I've crossed the line now. And then I remember leaving the situation, but I always come back and apologize. That's not Daddy. Yeah. Sorry. There's things going on, this and that. And I do share quite a lot with them, actually, because my parents always did that with me, that Daddy's got this going on, I'm trying to get this right, I'm trying to do this. And sometimes I just need you to help me. It'd be great if you could help me and just listen occasionally. And then we have a really beautiful conversation from that, where they both give me a cuddle, or one of them gives me a cuddle and says, it's okay, Daddy, we've got you, sort of thing. Or, it's just, and they're kind of special moments, but I don't want to kind of keep exploding to get that, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. But the point is to not, we all make mistakes. And when we do make mistakes, to not run from it, to not hide from it, and to don't think that we're, a bad person or a bad parent because of it. It's how, anybody, almost everybody has trauma. 80, 90% of kids growing up experience some trauma. the ones that are not damaged by it are the ones that have it explained and are nurtured and cared for and loved afterward, right? And have some chance to process it right then and reflect on it instead of it sort of separating from them, and it becomes something that continues to trigger them throughout their life because they didn't get a chance to process it at that time. So it's not, I mean, we're incredibly resilient, but especially when we're young, we need to have a chance and a safe place to process it right afterward with whatever happens.
And especially when they're trying to deal with all those emotions about what is angry, what is cheerful, what is happy, all these things they're trying to understand how their mind reacts, and also how their body reacts to different things. Trying to help them with that. And that's actually something that I remember as a youngster, we didn't really talk about a lot as a child. But I think we're more in tune with the importance of our emotions, aren't we? And how do we educate? My wife is brilliant at this, actually, trying to get me to understand that I need to help them with their emotions so they can express them and understand them. And they're not going to look at it through my lens. That's the brilliant thing I think she's made really aware of.
Yeah, the first thing, and it goes back to what you said in the beginning, that you have something that's bigger than you. Like the first thing is it's not about me. When my kid's blowing up, even yelling and screaming at me, it's not about me.
Yeah.
Right. So I can get over taking it personally. I can get over what other people are going to think if my kid's throwing a fit in the store. It's not about me. Any of it. What other people think, what my kid thinks, not about me. It's what's going on with them. And then I can become curious and then help them to name it and tame it, right? You can't tame it if you don't name it.
Exactly. Yeah.
What it is. Right. So no, that's really good stuff. This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Transition Mastery Coaching. If you have made it to midlife and you're successful and you are going through transitions in your life, in your business, in your career, or in your organization, and you are looking to master those transitions, to make the most of them, to accelerate into the next phase of your organization or your life. If you're facing challenges in your business, challenges in your relationship, challenges in your health, and you really want to transition those quickly, I'm here to guide you for that. And I look forward to working with you. And you can sign up for either Pinnacle Transition Coaching or Summit. Please go to lifeintransition.online/MLTM and scroll to see the Summit and Pinnacle coaching, or reach out to me directly on my email, art@artblanchford.com. And I look forward to connecting with you and helping you to accelerate your transitions to achieve what it is that you want to achieve in the second half in your organization and in your life, so you can live your whole life with no regrets. When you look back, Mark, so you've been a dad for 7 years now, what would you change, or what would you tell your younger self? At that moment when it started, is there anything you would tell your younger self as you're hitting this transition into fatherhood?
I don't think it's anything new that someone hadn't told me, if that makes sense. I don't want to create something with that. So it was about enjoying every moment. That's something that I've always tried to think about and use. So that would definitely be something I would say again.
Right.
But then it comes back to what I shared, not having all the answers. Be comfortable not having all the answers. Because initially I thought I had to try and have all the answers. But then I realized that's not going to work. That's not me being true and honest.
Yeah.
So they're the two things for me that people have mentioned, but I don't think I appreciated it as much as I do now, having lived it and kind of gone through to where we are now after 7 years as a parent.
Right. To know that this is gonna fly. So make time and be present. And
I think as a parent, it's not just transition to being a dad, it's the transition you go through in every stage of their development.
Absolutely.
That's what I've become even more appreciative of, that what was working last year is not going to work this year now, about how we operate, how we function, the conversations we have as they become smarter, wiser, more aware of their surroundings and their world and things that are going on. And their learning compared to my learning as a child is on a different stratosphere already with the way they talk about the world, the things that are going on. So I think as a parent, it's once again being comfortable not having all the answers, but you're going to go through different transitions with them as they kind of progress and get older.
Yeah, and absolutely, as you said earlier, then if you have the foundation where they can talk to you about anything, that's the most important, because then no matter what transitions they're going through, no matter what problems they're facing, it's not even necessarily that you're going to solve them, but you're going to go through them together. They're going to have somebody in their corner, right, as they're working that out, and that makes all the difference. There's another book that was incredibly beneficial to me as I was going through, especially adolescence with my kids, and it's by the Art Blanchford Institute. It's called The Anatomy of Peace. But the principle of that was so powerful is that you either see, at any given moment, you see people as human beings or as objects. And many of us see them as objects without even knowing it. And I was, you can hear about it in one of my earlier podcasts. I was, without knowing it, I was seeing my kids as sort of like accessories to my life, which in that book, they name them as vehicles, right? Which I think a lot of parents probably do, right? Like, I'm going to help them to be better. And, because and we think we're doing it for them. But the fact is we're actually doing it because we have an image of our life, how we think it should be. Like you mentioned, even in the beginning, you think, if I could have a boy and a girl, then it's perfect.
Yeah.
But that's about your life.
Yeah.
It's not about their life, right? And when my oldest was it wasn't that long ago when I had this realization. It was really heartbreaking. It was 2019, so it was 5 years ago. So my oldest was 18 already at that point when I had this realization that I still had this picture in my mind about creating a life for myself, which included these 3 kids being wonderful and doing all this good stuff, right? But that wasn't about them. It was really seeing it. It was like they were accessories to my life. So I was using them as a vehicle. Like in this book, they call it a vehicle. Like I'm using them to get something I want instead of loving them toward what's their development and their growth for themselves. And that was heart-wrenching, but incredibly powerful to see that it's like my job. It's not, and like as I said a minute ago, it's not about me. It's about them. Like they're not my kids in a sense. So they're their own human beings that I've got a privilege to steward for a little while. And to hope that I can steward them in the best way, And even like when my daughter decided she wants to go to school in the UK, if it was about me, I'd be like, oh, don't do that. I'm going to miss you so much, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, no, this is what her adventure is. Go for it. And instead of me losing a daughter, I'm going to have a base in the UK. And that's the shift, right? But I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have that realization before. And it makes all the difference in the world. It's like, do I see their desires, dreams, and wants, goals just as important as my own? Even if it doesn't fit my own, that theirs are just as important. And I see them exactly as a human being and not as an object of one kind or another, either vehicle, obstacle, or irrelevant as the ones I'd label in that book. So highly recommend that to all listeners out there too. I talked about that. I think it was back in episode 6. So it was a long time ago. But that was a book that was really powerful for me too, that made me reflect when you were talking about that, being part of something bigger than yourself. And that's like where you about not having answers. That's all that's not being about you, because what do you want to do as a dad? You want to look good. You want to have the answers. You want to make everything safe. You want to keep their hearts from breaking. You can't do that, but you can be there with them when they go through it and model what that looks like. Right.
Because you made me think of something as well, is that something that I use a lot with teams is about being present and being present in conversation. And it's something that I remember testing myself on, how often am I present in the conversations with them, or we have all these interferences going on, internal, obviously what's going on in our head, external with work, phones, all these other things. How do I kind of be in a position where I'm present in the conversation with them, rather than I've just left work 10 minutes ago and I've got loads of stuff going on here. How do I process that out? So that's something that I constantly kind of try and keep working on. How do I be present? Because what you're just sharing there it's not about me, but how am I there for their world and what they want to share and what conversation they want to have, rather than maybe me going in with other stuff that may be a blocker to kind of get in that deeper conversation with them that will assist them in whatever they want to do or whatever they want to discuss. So it made me think about that, actually.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really important. How has this transition to fatherhood, how has it affected the other relationships in your life? Your wife, your parents, your brother, colleagues. How has it shifted you with or your relationships to other people in your life?
So one thing that's fun is the conversations you get to have. I've always said that about being a dad, like the things that happen and the stuff they do that as an adult you could never get away with. I find some of that stuff that is, because a lot of my close friends have got children around the same age. Sure, yeah. So they're all their first children are mostly girls, so they're all a similar age. So all being dads, so we're trying to adjust to that and those conversations, which is always fun. And us being comfortable sharing those things is always really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think being a couple or a married couple that you've had children, you try your best to be together, but you're balancing so many things. So it does make that hard. But I think some of the things you come through make it even better and stronger with the things you get to share and experience. Something that's really special is, let's mention about my family is very close. So my parents love being grandparents. My dad would drop anything to be anywhere to help anyone, and especially his grandkids. He would drop anything wherever he is around the world and just be there. He's always been like that with me and my brother, but even more with the grandkids. My brother's got one child now. He's got a second one on the way. But the thing is, you don't have time to see those people as much as you used to.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the biggest change, is that your world starts to evolve around, doing pickups and drop-offs and not going out for food after work or drinks. It's, I've got to get home for pickup. But I found that okay because I got to enjoy those things prior. And now I get this new opportunity to be there for pickup. As I said, those magical moments in the car, the car cocoon, that I wouldn't kind of change that for anything.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I find that really special. But it does change the way that how often you go out with friends, and
sure,
there's more planning has to go into. Can we see you in a couple of months' time, or are you free in a couple of weeks, rather than should we catch up tonight, sort of thing. So just the change in diary and how you operate, because it is about making sure that they're picked up from school, they're fed, they're put to bed on time, and all these things. So they feel safe, secure, and that I always want to make sure that they feel that I'm there when they need me. That's something for me, I guess, what you shared earlier. I want to be the thing that they go to if they're struggling with something or they want some support. And if you're not there as much as you can be, then it's really hard for someone to feel comfortable doing that. So,
yeah. So, I mean, becoming a dad means that you're putting a ton of time into that. So you don't have as much time for your other relationships. Yeah. But the few ones that are really important, then you still make time. You just have to be really intentional about it. Yeah.
And the fun thing is as well, because my close friends have got children the similar age. Like we had a couple over yesterday, and the two daughters, they're a year apart, but they hadn't seen each other for a couple of months, but boom, it's like they hadn't been separated.
Right.
The younger two are both boys, and they were out digging up holes in the mud in the garden together and out smiling, having fun. And you just sit there going, this is incredible to watch, just their relationships evolving themselves, and their personalities coming out with how they interact with their friends. So that's something that I really enjoy kind of watching.
Yeah, no, that's really great. Awesome. I have two final questions, but first one, Mark, is if you were to give any advice to new dads, right? What's one tool? What's one thing that you've learned that you think that anybody could do right now that would make this process better? I mean, I said new dads. Let me take that back to dads in general. What have you learned, or what have you seen, or what's one tool that you would share that could really make a difference for other fathers or mothers, parents?
I started thinking about it earlier when you were talking, and it's that being present. How do I be present? And I think it relates to some of the things we both shared from both our stories regarding, not coming with my agenda, but how do I be present for what they want to share? And what is my tool to get rid of my interferences so I can be present in that conversation? Now, that could be a 30-second thing you do, where it could be you step outside, get some fresh air. I don't know. It could be listen to a podcast. It could be music. It could be anything. But what is your tool to getting you the right frame of mind so you're ready for being present for them? So that's something that is really important to me. And maybe I just do that naturally now without thinking about it. But how do you get in the right frame of mind to be present for that conversation you're about to have with them?
Wonderful. No, I think that's great. And it brings up this, the greatest gift one human being can give to another is the purity of their attention. And the purity of the attention, giving them your full presence as kids and making sure that they are seen is incredibly valuable. So you're basically, whatever it is that you need to do to set the phone down, to turn off the thinking about work or the other things in the diary and be fully present with them is the tool you would recommend, which anybody can do. So no, that's great. Then the last question, Mark, where can people find out more about you? Like if they want to find out more about you, where can they connect with you and learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, so Mark Hunter GB. I'm on both of those. LinkedIn as well, so definitely kind of find Mark Hunter on LinkedIn. One thing that I love doing is that as an athlete, I was always about performance and trying to get the best out of me to help my teammates. The job I get to do now is helping people reach, hopefully, their potential. So working with different teams and leaders. And I guess trying those things as a dad as well, so I get to do both really. But yeah, you can find me on definitely on those three things.
Okay.
If you want to reach out and connect,
and we'll put those all in the show notes as well. So Mark Hunter GB, and we'll have all those in the show notes. But Mark, I really appreciate it. I think it's been a great, interesting conversation for me, helping me to continue to learn. As you know, because my kids are now 23, 19, 21. And yet parenting is still super active, which is one thing I'm super grateful for, because they could choose to be checked out now. But it's really the most, I always say, being a parent is the most difficult and the best job that there is.
So you made me think about one more thing out when you said that, is that what someone said to me, the sign to them of success is that their kids, when they leave home, still want to come around for Sunday lunch, Christmas dinner.
Right.
They want to come home. He said, you'll know if you've done a good job if they want to do that. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. My 21-year-old's in university, and he's president of the fraternity that I was in when I was in the university. And he calls me most days with, hey, Dad, how do I handle this situation?
Nice.
I got a challenge with this. What do I do? Or this financial thing, just, the IRS just called or whatever. How do we handle it? Right. And that's really great that I get to be with him. And yesterday I was driving home from visiting a cousin, and, I was only a half hour out of the way. So I said, hey, how about we have dinner before you have your meetings tonight? And, popped in with lunch and sat in his room in the fraternity house and watched a little bit of football and, hanging out with him and his friends.
Cool. Love.
But to have that at 21 years old is, it's really gratifying. And then to remember to be present with my kids now as well, especially with them, but with every human being. So that's a great gift to all of us, Mark. But I really appreciate your time, really appreciate your wisdom and how you're showing up in the world as a father. We need a lot of that. So thank you.
Cheers. Thanks very much. Thank you.
I can't wait to hear what action you are taking. Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online, and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.